Okay, today is July 31st, 2023. This is Infinite Plane Radio, Open Phones for Open Minds. And that was MVP, the Hardware Vandals Auto Hoaxer Revolution. We are joined by Nate P. Someone says turn my mic up a little bit louder. Multi Zero Dagger AJ206 We Jump 67 Bear X322X. If you just missed it, we were live on YouTube separately. I was opening up a box of books. So we have about half a dozen copies of the World Stage Deprogramming Guide listed on eBay, which isn't superseded, but is more or less included in the upcoming, about to be published Auto Hoaxology 101 textbook, which is a very important development, if you ask me, because the so-called truthers have been without a framework. They've been duped, they've been maligned, and they've been controlled. They've been quarantined, they've been poisoned, and I think we have the cure for the poison red pill. And we're going to be introducing it here in a very organized way that the way that it's framed, it's going to be very difficult to take it out of context and say that we're somehow terrorists, which is pretty much the go-to explanation. So I have a list of things I want to talk about today. Fake bears came back to haunt. MAGA Ben, a reference to Ben Shapiro. Aliens want to depopulate us. That was apparently revealed to us 10 years ago. The connections between Barbie and Oppenheimer goes deeper than just their timing. 8-4, there's some kind of comm from General Flynn about what's going to happen on 8-4, signifying some kind of collective initiation. We're going to talk about Nick Fuentes and the incel jihad, as well as the significance of the glowing X that Musk put on Twitter headquarters, or formerly known as Twitter's headquarters, and how it ties in to the occult secret society's worship of the Dog Star, or Doge Star, as I referred to it here in the title. So we'll get into all these things, one after another. Let's start with this, though, because this is very, very important, and it's extremely relevant to our entire conversation about the reality or unreality of bears or birds. If you don't know this, just the other day, Musk was talking about how birds aren't real, which is a reference to a conspiracy theory that birds are fake. A conspiracy theory that is part of a well-funded operation and movement that's an extension of the Parkland High School shooting psyop. Same actors, but they're attacking the conspiracy theorists with this absurdist movement that has some credibility as far as the masses think that actually represents people like you. Well, there's a similar trend on TikTok and on Twitter where people are just in outright denial of the existence of birds and gorillas, specific birds, like for example, they'll say parrots are actually the basis for the toucan, which is a parrot with a beak glued on it. And it sounds insane, it sounds ludicrous, but that is indeed something that's been spread around, along with stuff about koala bears. Koala bears similarly being accused of being fake, and penguins. And I didn't take it seriously, but I decided to debunk it. I decided I would go through the effort to deconstruct that belief. Is it a legitimate belief? Is it a bad faith claim? Does it deserve any consideration whatsoever, even to debunk it? And I think it does. Because you don't want the bird denialists to be mixed up with those of you who are engaging in a rational deconstruction of the PSYOP entertainment complex, the theater of PSYWAR. And why would you want that? Why would you want that to be mixed in? And I've been suggesting that no, we don't have to. We don't have to sit there and treat that as an on-par idea. Infinite Plane Radio. Hey, do you believe in bears?
This is what's that?
Do you believe in koala bears?
Yeah, I remember that guy who died in Canada. He used to not believe in any of those things, from great white sharks, koala bears, panda bears, so many things. Is that who you're referring to?
Yeah, in general, yes.
That guy, Mr.
But it's
Yeah, he. So from his way he used to say it, I disagreed with him. I think they're real.
Well, the basis for saying that they're fake is, in my view, it comes from an argument from incredulity. Like, it looks fake to me, it's outside of my range of experience, so I'm going to call it fake. And I'm just saying that that is a logical fallacy itself called argument from incredulity. And it becomes
I
an
don't know the word incredulity.
it just means you're incredulous. It's like it's so hard to believe it can't be real. Well, just because it's hard to believe doesn't mean it's not true. And that's the basis for their assertion.
Yeah, I looked at I've watched many hours on that one back 2016 or 17, and then he got me on white shark ones. You know, he also did white sharks, right?
What did he say
Great
about
white
white
shark.
sharks? Great white sharks, they were
What's
animatronics?
that?
Did he say they were animatronics, that they were
No, he
fake?
says they just don't exist. They just don't exist. The ones that get is just whatever they got. It's just they're fake. But what it is he says if you look that their storyline, which there is no great white sharks in captivity in any sea area like marine world or anything like that, and the story is behind that is the longest ones ever lived in captivity is 22 days. They just can't keep one in captivity; they die, and so his theory was they don't exist.
Okay, well, panda bear denialism is also a huge thing, and I've seen a number of people argue that these were a hoax and that they were somehow passed on through some kind of, I don't know, money making venture, kind of like a freak show.
I know. Well, since I've been into that since seven, every time I look, I've seen some pretty pictures that the panda bears. I've seen just person taking it like you or me taking pictures, and they're on the internet, and I'm saying, and their videos, and I'm saying, no, those are real. That's that's just the way I go. You think they're real or not real,
Well, I'm just saying here
in your
that
opinion?
it's not a matter of opinion. Like, is the sky real? That's not a matter of opinion. And what I'm arguing here is that they're espousing opinions that are bad faith opinions. They don't actually believe these things are fake. It's a bad faith argument. Essentially, they're lying under the cover of being incredulous. And it's a curious thing, but I don't think it's a legitimate claim that even deserves a response.
Well, do you remember the guy who died about 4 years ago, 3 years ago? It started with a C. He was big. Everybody knew him. I just can't remember his name now. He was
Not
from
at the moment,
Canada,
but hey,
and he died.
it
He
looks
was
like we're
42
having
years
some
old.
looks like we're having some audio issues. So I'm gonna go ahead and maybe see if I can reset the phones. But it's because I'm using this old tower. Anyway, appreciate the call. So someone in the comment section asks about the birds frozen in the sky, and I can answer that. The birds frozen in the sky are actually birds that are dead on power lines. But with the exposure up, they're recording the sky as a background. It's bright. It blurs out the wire because you'll notice these things are only there in intersections. It's the only place where you see these so-called birds floating in the sky. Easy to debunk, but when you see a clip out of context, it's like a magic trick. What is a magic trick? It's a series of actions. It's like a clip. It's a short series of actions that are done for the benefit of the audience. It's a performance thing, but it requires that you're sitting in your seat, that you get a limited perspective that they control. And that's what the news is. The news is a magic show. Now, let me go ahead and play this clip. This is the reason why I'm talking about the birds and the bears.
Next this lunchtime, watch closely what you are about to see. A zoo in China has had to deny that one of its bears was actually a human wearing a costume. Pictures and videos circulating on social media showed a sun bear standing on slender hind legs, which users said looked suspiciously like a human in a bear suit. The zoo in eastern China denied the accusations and said the sun bear from Malaysia was smaller and looked different, but it was real.
Now, this has been shared by a lot of the people who have claimed that bears are fake as vindication. For example, Seek the Truth here says humans wearing bear suits been saying this for years. Okay, so is there no audio for me either? Okay, it looks like we may be having audio issues. I don't know if it's going to be worth continuing here. You know what? Here's the thing. I have an old computer, and I've been trying to work with it, but there's limitations to what I can do because I'm using open broadcast software. But when callers call in, yeah, I'm not really sure. But it's a computer thing. I could just shut off phones until I have a better thing. But I'm just saying, let's just go with what we have. You know, it's better than nothing. And again, I think that open phones has been one of the main reasons why we've been targeted for censorship, because it's human intel. And it's the reason why many of our callers are, I think you'll find, well, we can go back to the catalog, you can see for yourself that our channel's been targeted with federal agents like no other channel out there. Like, if you don't believe in conspiracy theories, if you don't believe in targeted individuals, you just have to hang out with us for a bit. We have been targeted. Anyway, what you're seeing here is a lot of people are complaining or suggesting that this is a human in a bear suit.
Bear standing on slender hind legs, which users said looked suspiciously like a human.
Now, when you look at it sit, that to me debunks that it could be a human. The physiology is off. However, when the sun bear, which is a sort of like a black bear, but it's really skinny, and when it stands, the back of his skin is wrinkled because he's got really short fur. And it does look like a human, like some people. I've seen people with this body shape from the waist down. And so is this a human being in a suit? Well, no, it's not. You couldn't make that judgment based on one video here. But I'm bringing this up because it raises this question about fakeability. Are bears fakeable? Yes. You can buy bear costumes. 100%. Bears are fakeable. Are they fakeable at scale? Is there some widespread conspiracy to fake bears? That hasn't been proven. And the people who are making these claims aren't doing their part. They're shifting the burden of proof, and they're suggesting that you, as in you, the person that they're suggesting this to, have to prove them wrong. And the fact is they have to go to the zoos and they have to make the case. And one other point. A lot of people believe in Bigfoot because a lot of people have seen what they thought was a Bigfoot. And I would say that the Bigfoot explanation is nothing more than bears walking upright, which they're apt to do. Okay, so I'm going to show you the birds floating, which is also fake. And video is not evidence, whether it's coming from mainstream or not. As a rule, video is not evidence. Okay, bird frozen in midair. Okay, so here you have what appears to be a bird frozen in the air. Someone's getting up on a truck to get it. Now, it looks like it's frozen in the air. And it's because whatever it's on, the wire is not visible against the backdrop of the sky. So it's a photography thing. It's an optical illusion. That's all it is. Continuing, this is something I thought was kind of worth considering. The symbolism of the Twitter bird turning into an X. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are in the Doge days of summer. And this means that Sirius, the dog star, the Freemasonic god star, is behind the sun. And this goes on from July 3rd till August the 11th. And it's venerated by the cult members in a number of cryptic ways. So here you have X, the new name of Twitter. And X's slogan is, "Blaze your glory." Blaze your glory. Well, turns out that the Freemasonic cult refers to the dog star Sirius as the blazing star. Sirius comes from the Greek word meaning lit or glowing. So now if you look at the X on top of the Twitter, formerly Twitter headquarters, you have the big glowing X, which they took down already. Now, the shining X, I'm suggesting, was likely a serious ritual. And then I also wanted to point out that the cross and the dove have been Christian symbols from the very beginning. I mean, the cross was associated with Christianity after Constantine. And I've been saying for some time that the sign of the X, the sign of the Twitter X, that Musk has brought forth is actually a reference to his historic analog of Constantine as he consolidates media. Pope Elon, Emperor Elon. Now, the broadest understanding of the dove appeared with the advent of Christianity, so I'm positing that the bird to the cross has an inner meaning and ties into the occult interpretation of these commonly observed Christian symbols. We talk about the dove a lot in the context of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and how it refers to the post-flood, the olive branch. You can go back, dud flooding. It's a reset symbol, very much like the phoenix. I have a lot more information here about the blazing star and its significance according to the Masonic scholar Albert Pike, who wrote the degrees 4 through 33. And then a lot of people have referenced this, that if you mirror the X with a fatter bar, it gives you a convincing square and compass. Now, I don't know if it's 90 degrees. I don't know if that's perfect, but my point being here is it could be the case, just given the fact that we're in the dog days of summer, and Musk puts this blazing lit X, and he says, blaze your glory as the new slogan. Okay, going through your comments. Mason Free says that frozen bird video. Yeah, it's not a frozen bird video. It's a video where there's a bird hanging from something or caught on something that you can't see. The idea that the bird would just be levitating is usually, here's the thing people will say. If they believe in the Mandela effect, they'll say, it's a glitch in the matrix. And this is because of the fundamental error of just treating video as evidence, not assuming it's been doctored. And it's a safe assumption it has been doctored. And that's the main premise behind this Auto Hoaxology 101 book, is that the environment we live in is so saturated with calculated deceptions, magic tricks, that it's almost like going out without any kind of defense system. It's just, you're disarmed. You're disarmed mentally. I mean, I use the phrase mind aids. Maybe it's not polite, but it's the best way to describe the state of a person who doesn't have any way to filter out fake from real. It's a total lack of discernment. And, lately, I've been thinking about the symbol of the nuclear bomb. And we'll talk about this Barbie Oppenheimer thing. Because we just watched Newsbenders as a group. And Newsbenders is about a shadowy cabal at the top of media that actually controls all news, and they fake news, and they write it 5 years in advance. And that's kind of the basic premise behind Newsbenders. And they were talking about how they really started the whole thing with Hiroshima. And I thought, that's fascinating. Hiroshima. In other words, the nuclear bomb, I'm thinking, might represent the destruction of the mind, or the obliteration of objective reality and our ability to relate to a common objective reality, which has put us in the state of subservience, dependence on the mainstream interpretation and its filter. So like maybe they did blow up the world. They did destroy reality when they got everyone to accept the premise that the nuclear bomb was real, because that changed the entire game. That's a wild card. That's a new thing they invented. And it changed the dynamics of geopolitics, and it cowered mankind to the cult of scientism and what its priesthood has brought out. Joined by Axiom Oblivion. Thank you for joining. Dwayne Garrett. Okay, Northern Girl has joined. Thank you for joining. We're almost firing on all cylinders. We have some audio issues to work out with the phones, but it's a OBS thing. Yes, Dwayne Garrett, they nuked the brain. And I think this actually does fit. This does fit into the bigger story. So let's go ahead and get into that. This is where we're getting into this conversation. We were actually talking about nukes and Barbie and Ben Shapiro. And, okay, so I heard that Oppenheimer, this is what was written by Cubstar. He said, I heard that Oppenheimer was more about him shagging than actually about any bomb. And Barbie is vacuous nonsense. Barbie is a blonde bombshell. The nukes blew up toy houses. Barbenheimer would mean Barbie house. Nukes aren't real has been the meme of the internet of the day. Joe Rogan gave it coverage. And now Shapiro is burning Barbies, nuking Barbies. Titan went missing at the beginning of Cancer and looked like a nuke bomb. Oppenheimer, Barbie opened at the end of Cancer. Barbie and Ken have no genitals. So Kent 6'9", that's all I got. Okay, well, he's talking about the symbol of Cancer. This is the main thing here. You have a picture of Ben Shapiro holding a bomb and Barbie. So I'm kind of thinking about this. I'm like, well, if you really get into it, the idea of a bombshell, like a blonde bombshell, connects to the etymology of bikini. Bikini is from Bikini Island, where they were testing nukes. So from the very beginning, there's been a connection between Barbie and the nuclear bomb, the bombshell thing. So what he's correlating here is probably not a coincidence. Going through your comments, Jump 67 said Owen Benjamin covered the nukes being fake as well. Yeah, here's what I think. I think Owen Benjamin caused the nukes being fake thing, which is brought up in Newsbenders. Like, it's not a new idea. But he brought it up and he made it go kind of viral online through Twitter. And immediately after, Joe Rogan starts blabbing about it with one of his guests in a very shallow way. And I think that Joe Rogan is a gatekeeper. And I think one of the things that they do is they try to co-opt anything that's about to go viral to make sure they can steer it. So if you ask me, Rogan is doing damage control for Owen Benjamin. We says that's a stretch there, Barbie and nukes. Well, if you haven't seen this phenomenon of Barbie Oppenheimer, and there are a few other elements to it. Like, for example, just the fact that Ben Shapiro is holding a bomb and a nuke. These are intentional correlations. And I think it's because they also came out at the same exact time. The movie that did politics right between Barbie and Oppenheimer, the two of them have been put together. And you'll find many, many images online right now with Oppenheimer next to Barbie. And here she is in a black and white striped thing, and he's got his rimmed hat. And I'm suggesting that, no, this is just more meta scripting. And so we're getting into, what does Barbie mean? And what does this character mean? Is this some kind of reference to Mystery Babylon? Is this some kind of goddess entity idol? And if you really get into dolls and idols and idolatry and celebrity worship, it all begins to tie together. Specifically, when you get into the origin of the religion we're in now, the modern scientism paradigm, it's been conveyed through movies. It's pretty much, I think, explained in a microcosm. If you look back to Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, and Marjorie Cameron, and their little ritual there, they call it the Babylon working. It set the stage for this new age, and they introduced this new goddess concept, which they call Babylon, who's sort of just a repackaged ISIS. And it wouldn't surprise me if this is another representation of the same. And when it comes to idols and idolatry, if you look at magical ritual, if you look at Masonic ritual, if you look at Wicca, in all these, or Super Bowl rituals, in all these cases, the high priest or priestess is worshipped as though they are an incarnation of said deity. So this adulation of the rock stars, yeah, it's actually religious worship. You're actually participating in a very occult ritual, beyond just louche extraction and getting your attention. There's another element to it, and I think you could call it idolatry. So there's something to that, and we just started scratching the surface. But let me bring up this thing with, we talked about Ben Shapiro burning Barbie. Ben Shapiro standing here in front of a trash can, holding a bomb, and then he burns the Barbie. He reviewed the movie. He was kind of ripped on because he spent about 45 minutes ripping on it, just tearing the movie apart. and his review is terrible. I won't watch the movie. I don't care to. But the reviews were bad, and most of the people who reviewed it hadn't even watched it. Most of them admitted it. Ben Shapiro sets fire to a Barbie doll as he slams woke movie. Now think about this. This is what I find to be indicative of MAGA Ben and why I call him MAGA Ben. He's burning Barbie because she spoke out against the patriarchy, because her hair is not covered. So in other words, he burned Barbie for the same reason the Taliban would have. A corrupt Western woman. This is the reason why the entire right wing is all about the trad wives, because Barbie is flaunting that. This movie is all about, feminist ideals trumping this traditional wife role, which ties into MAGA, Make America Great Again, when women fit these traditional roles. So MAGA ban is the domestic counterpart to the Taliban, and it's being led by these right-wingers. And Ben Shapiro is one of the primary drivers of this, along with, I would say, Jack Posobiec and Matt Walsh. But pathetically, now that he's trying to hold himself up as a paragon of masculinity, pathetically, Ben Shapiro is trying to grow a beard. And he's been trying for like months and months and months. And it's starting to look like it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And anyway, my point is, this is just another example of culture war and people throwing more accelerant on the flames. So there you have it, MAGA Ben. Now, the incel jihad is a thing. The incels are, in fact, the domestic counterpart to the holy warriors. And they're waging a holy war against what? The great Satan, the deep state, Western values, Western women. It's the same fight. It's the same exact fight. And that's where you get characters like Nick Fuentes, who is a staunch proponent of incelism. So they're not avoiding sex because anything other than they feel like women are like Barbie. They're too liberated. They can vote. They're not pregnant enough. They're not young enough. He's the one who said that in 5 years, when he's 30, he's going to find himself a 16-year-old. Now, America First represents the views of the white nationalist presence in America today. Well, pretty much globally. This is how they see women. But what's interesting here is the reason they're incels is because they see themselves as holy warriors. They're saving themselves. And this is key. Now, what's more interesting here is we talk about these jihadists in their basements, or their caves rather. Well, here's Nick Fuentes in his basement. And the idea that they are going to go explode somewhere and then go to heaven and have a bunch of virgins. Yeah, I think we're seeing some of the same mentalities here. But here's Fuentes saying that the sex act itself is, I'll let you listen to him.
You should not seek sex, because if you seek sex, you will become gay, because sex is a gay act. It's totally gay. The straightest thing you could do is to never have sex. And everyone knows that's true. Want to know why? Because you retain your semen and you sublimate your sexual desire to creating things. That's why celibacy is the straightest thing. Because who are the celibate?
So in other words, you're only straight if you're celibate. And this is laughable. You might mock it. If you didn't hear him, it's, again, I got to fix my audio. But the main thrust of it is this. They are advocating celibacy as a form of being a holy warrior resisting the deep state, the great Satan. Yeah, unfortunately, our audio is not going to be working yet. And look, I'm still very close to selling that shark painting. So I'm going to be replacing the tower. I have another computer which has perfect audio, but it crashes every 40 minutes. So it's kind of it's a choice I had to make here. Jump 67 says, all copying Owen Benjamin. Yeah, I do see this element here of these MAGA band values actually being fairly widespread. And I think it's coming from the same source. I've seen multiple different right-wingers who all talk about how mad they are that women aren't modest enough in the gym. So they're letting you know that they're in the gym, and they're letting you know that the women aren't covering themselves, and they find this offensive. Now, the audio is bad, so I can't play this, but this is from
Thank you,
10 years
Frank
ago.
Lang.
This is the former
We at
Canadian Minister
IPS
of Defense,
appreciate the
Paul
support.
Hellyer. And in April of 2013, 10 years before COVID, he claimed that aliens have given human governments 10 years to depopulate or initiate some kind of a plan.
Had no part in this. We contacted your leaders because your planet is in grave trouble. Your leaders said the vast majority of your population wasn't ready for anything like us yet. So we made time agreements with your leaders as to when your people would be made aware of our presence. Your air, your water are contaminated. Your forests.
Now, what you have here is a Canadian Minister of Defense pulling a Greta, and in addition to telling us how bad we are for the environment, supposedly we have 10 years until the aliens are going to reveal themselves, and hopefully we've depopulated by then. And he actually uses the word depopulation. It's going around right now because aliens are trending right now. I think it's all ridiculous. They're constantly using this alien idea as a replacement for angels, where they're trying to get us to be better people. It's all a religion. And once you understand it's a religion, like the angels in the Bible, they're judgmental, they're going to tear stuff down, or they're rapturous, or all the characteristics ascribed to angels have been attached to aliens. So there you have it. It's your new world order religion, and it's not new. Like anytime they tell you, like, oh, aliens are about to come, yeah, this is a bait and switch. It's never going to happen. They're always going to move the goalpost. The world has never ended. Angels have never invaded. Rapture hasn't happened. Why would we expect aliens to? Maybe the way that the game is played is they forever move the goalpost to keep you forever entranced. Because if they ever provided anything, it would be the end of it. Okay, let me go ahead and go back to this really quick, just to show you where I was going at with the Oppenheimer-Barbie correlations and connections, and I think these are strange, but Barbenheimer, box office Barbie, Oppenheimer, just to show you that they put these together. Nuclear testing at Bikini Atoll, July 1st, 1946. And then the etymology of bikini, named after Bikini Island, where an atom bomb was exploded. And from this, the phrase bombshell was derived. Then you have the evolution of Barbie from blonde bombshell to career-seeking feminist, or whatever it says here. But there's a number of correlations here, and the strongest link, I think, might be in the movie itself. And I'll have to go see Oppenheimer, because I think it has to do with how they've correlated the bomb with the sex act. And apparently he reads that line about being a destroyer of worlds while he's doing it. So there's something here that has to do with the occult or alchemical meaning of the destruction of primordial matter and the Trinity site that may not have to do with specifically a bomb. Big Bang, says Salty Siren. Exactly. Exactly. One more thing about the MAGA ban. I don't believe Nick Fuentes is anything other than an actor. I mean, this is, if you don't remember, he was hanging out with Ye and Milo and Trump. These are all actors. He doesn't really believe this. I think you can tell. But this is a caricature right out of the PSYOP department. And someone was asking me about the number 611 and how I'd associate it with the right wing and the domestic extremist presence here. And I was saying the 611 is an inverted 9/11. MAGA ban, Taliban. They transplanted the ideology here. I mean, it's really a work of art when you look at the theater of Psywar and how they are able to manage these things. Former Israeli space security chief says extraterrestrials exist and Trump knows about it. A galactic federation has been waiting for humans to reach a stage where we will understand. See, they won't come down until mankind is ready. Like the resurrection's waiting for what? A world without sin or something. Like they're waiting for us all to be saved or vaxxed. And again, you will never be saved. And I think this is something else too. Because in the construct of we're talking about the media as a personality, like as a narcissistic personality construct. one thing that typifies the narcissist is they love bomb and idealize their targets first. Then they devalue them. And then from then on, the individual will always attempt to get back to that original state of being loved. This happens on the individual relationships between the narcissistic personality and its targets, and also with groups. You join a cult. When you first join the cult, everybody loves you, everybody's learning your name, lots of handshakes. But then as you get integrated into the club, people care less and less. And you have to work harder for that same level of affection and attention. That's a dynamic they introduce to keep you running on a hamster wheel forever like a dupe, like a fool. And for the same exact reason, the aliens will never come. Salvation will never come. We will never have a golden age. There will never be a great awakening or a great reset. It's always about the process. It's like a Ponzi scheme. And as long as you think that it's there, you will be chasing that carrot. Continuing here, Klaus Schwab's daughter. Now, what a hypocrite. All these depopulationists have reproduced. Like, if you've reproduced, you shouldn't be allowed at the WEF. Klaus Schwab's daughter says permanent climate lockdowns coming whether you like it or not. And this is fact-checked. Now, if you've been listening to this channel, you already knew this. You knew this back in March of 2020 when I said that the COVID was simply a stalking horse for radical environmentalism and climate change lockdowns. And we've borne this out. You know, RT put out an article back then and it said, COVID is doing Greta's work. And absolutely. Okay, so we talked about the sun bears that are not fake and how bears walking upright are likely the explanation for Bigfoot. And I'll debate anybody on this matter if you want to debate this matter. I think that the best explanation for Bigfoot is bears. I don't even think that Bigfoot should be entered into the realm of possibility. There's a lot of sneakiness that goes into belief systems and religions. Like, religions are often based on fake miracles, creating fake miracles, statues that weep blood. You know, easy to do. And these fake miracles form the basis for entire worldviews. But a lot of them can be debunked quite easily. And to debunk these things, you need certain cognitive tools, you need certain heuristics, you need a logical framework. And I think this is why the priesthood has always insisted on being literate and educated relative to their uneducated sheep. Dominic says it's easier to fool someone than convince them they've been fooled. Exactly. And here's the thing. They convince people of things through their emotions, which is a short circuit. So they shoehorn in things that shouldn't even have been accepted into your frame of reference as like true. And once somebody believes something because they glommed onto it through their emotions, good luck prying it out. People kill over their beliefs. Some days I think I'm going to get killed over not believing in, chemtrails. Or if I'm not an anti-vaxxer, some vaxxer is going to take it out on me. People do take it out on you. Okay, I'm going through your comments. Now, that one more point about that. It's easier to fool someone than convince them they've been fooled. There's a chapter in the Autohoaxology textbook which asks the question, are you dupable? Can you be duped? And if your answer is no, then, well, you are already duping yourself. Because everything we're talking about, everything in this realm or in our, everything we can perceive is going through a filter, and the filter has its built-in limitations. Like I've been saying before, your eyes will tell you that a boat is going over a horizon, which would lead you to conclude that you're on a curved surface or a cylinder or a ball. I think it'd be cylinder. But whatever the case, that's just not true. It has to do with the angular resolution of your eyes and its inability to distinguish these distant objects from the horizon. But they didn't actually sink into it. Just like the sun may look like it's in the clouds. It's not. So your senses have their limitations, but if the mind is not apprised of this and is just convinced to take things like literally, visual literalism, it obviously would hamper your understanding of things. And I think that the TV screen has become such an authority that people see it and they believe it. And it's not a small deal. So people believe in nukes and nukes aren't real. Well, the existence of nukes is really one of the main considerations in all of our geopolitical relationships, that there's this button somebody can push that will blow everything up, that will change everything. And if that doesn't exist, then why should we care? And it's not just that. It goes down and down and down. But the existence of a universally agreed upon lie suggests that there's a centralized control. And that's what I'm pointing out. This is what I've been pointing out this entire time, that there is the appearance of a separated, fragmented media, independent media, alternative media, competing media, political, across different national boundaries. But no, it's a pyramid, it's a hierarchical structure. And in this hierarchy, it's built on levels of knowledge, and the people at the top know more. But it's global. If it wasn't, 9/11 wouldn't have happened. You wouldn't be able to pull off psyops if there wasn't uniformity in purpose from above. This occurred to me after I started really studying all the school shootings, because for the longest time I thought, okay, so the Democrats are so evil, the left is so sick, that it's going to murder a bunch of kids to score political points. I mean, that's what I was left thinking. But then I find out that these are fake. And I'm like, wait, why is Armalite, why are these gun companies, why is the right-wing media taking the blame? Why are the gun companies getting sued? Why are they paying out if this is debunkable? If I can debunk it here with my laptop, why are these companies paying millions if they're not part of it? And then what's more, if people like James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, if they're really trying to debunk CNN, why aren't they going for the throat? This always shocked me. I'm like, okay, you say you're going after CNN, and you're going after the left. You're going after the Democrat media complex. You want to expose it. And it's cultural Marxist agendas or whatever. Well, what better way? You could depants them. You could humiliate CNN by giving an expose on how they're faking mass shootings or how they're using psyops. And I realized the reason why the right wing doesn't call out left wing psyops is because they're part of it. And that's the big reveal, that the left and the right are both on team psywar. So it makes more sense to me to look at mass media as a world-spanning religion, the purpose of which is to maintain, control, moderate the masses. You could look at it as almost a military operation, but it's psychological war. But, I guess you could include a lot of other things in it. But what they don't do as a matter of practice is they don't do a lot of the things that the conspiracy theorists are convinced that they're doing. So it's such a tricky thing where you have the people who are believing the dream, and then you have those who take the dream a lot more seriously because they think it's a lot more sinister. And they run with these false flag theories where, again, it's just inherently contradictory to think that the left would be purposefully killing kids and the right wing wouldn't be exposing this operation as such. Now, there's something else I wanted to bring up. Speaking of these shootings, you had the Vegas shooting, which was targeting conservatives. That's why they shot up country music. And country music has been the subject of the left as of recently because of Jason Aldean and his song, Try That in a Small Town. And what the leftist pundits are talking about is how country music has a racist history. So they're bringing up a lot of this stuff right now. They're bringing up these old lynchings nobody's heard about, and they're saying this is suggesting lynch culture. I heard that phrase today. I'm bringing this up because Jason Aldean was part of the Vegas psyop, and now he's part of this. So you're looking at an actor, you're looking at an operative, you're looking at an agent provocateur. So there's no way that it's an accident that there's a controversy around this particular song. 777 says the happenings in Nashville and the Daily Wire being there is too coincidental. Oh, yeah, exactly. See, I would say this, that the Nashville school shooting was a right-wing production. Sandy Hook was a left-wing. Nashville is targeting the right. Right-wingers don't care about Sandy Hook other than to call it fake. The left, that's their main rallying cry. That's ground zero for the gun grab thing, the anti-gun. That's what they can always point to. It's their Holocaust. But for the right, they don't care about that because the shooter was one of theirs. Just some bowl cut kid exercising his Second Amendment. But they suddenly care about Nashville because the shooter was a leftist, a trans activist, and had a grievance with Christianity. And they're implying that this is part of some deeper attack against American Christian identity itself, that it's like a satanic thing. So I'm seeing a lot of that. And Jack Posobiec has really pushed that line, and also pushing exorcisms. Like, I'm finding this to be interesting how this satanic panic narrative, which is expanding. In fact, that one shooter, the shooter who, it was around Christmas, his name was Crumb. He looked similar to Kyle Rittenhouse, only he was given a gun on Christmas. I said that it was like a mashup, actually. It was like a Kyle Rittenhouse Christmas Story mashup. But anyway, this shooter, this Christmas Story-like shooter, released a manifesto, or apparently Ethan Crumbley. And apparently this manifesto was, quote, demonic. That's the word they used. So we're seeing that kind of rhetoric, putting things in this context of, demons and the satanic thing, which, if you remember, after the Nashville shooting, you had the Trans Day of Rage being scheduled, and then you had the incident with Target, and then Target became kind of a center of the culture war for a few weeks there. It's amazing how fast these things go. Now, if you're looking at the screen, you see Ethan Crumb, the one who was given a gun on Christmas, just like A Christmas Story. And this is a Michigan school shooter who may get life in prison. And he was remarked on for his resemblance to Kyle Rittenhouse, among other things. I'm just pointing out here, though, that this narrative of evil and the satanic panic thing is being brought up intentionally. It's a storyline that I've been monitoring. Now, Stranger Things has satanic panics as Tominoid. Yeah, exactly. And if you look at Stranger Things' main characters, they all look like the recent shooters. In fact, the shooter of Nashville looks like Elle. The character 11, Elle, looks like the Nashville shooter. And what's more, in the series Stranger Things, Elle kills number 1. Because she's number 11, she kills number 1, the first created of this batch of, mind-controlled individuals who were experimented on. And it's interesting because the shooter in Nashville made it a point to go into the chapel and shoot a stained glass window of Adam, the first man, number 1. So there's a number of tie-ins between Stranger Things and their role-playing game, the Hellfire Club, the Satanic Panic that it's based on, and this modern-day Satanic Panic. And the modern Satanic Panic is being promulgated by individuals like Jack Posobiec, who attended a exorcism, and he was also the one who went to Comet Pizza and helped kick off Pizzagate, which is another satanic panic, where you have a bunch of people crowdsourcing, looking for symbols, and trying to determine. It's a witch hunt. And the witch hunt thing is a psyop. And here's the thing that I find most interesting is that the left doesn't believe in the devil or sin or God, but they believe in the globe and global warming. They believe in COVID, which is kind of a devil to them. They don't believe in the idea of sin, so they don't have to act accordingly. But on the right, it's the complete opposite. But my point is, the pandemic model is the purification model in the religion of scientism, where you have to quarantine yourself. But in the more traditional way, You're quarantining from the sinful. You're quarantining from the world itself, from the, quote, devil. There's a parallel here. And the parallel is that the pandemic has a parallel with the moral panic-demic. So they're using moral panic in their psy-war, and they're targeting the right wing with it. And that's what I'm saying. The thing with Target, the thing with the Pizzagate, and the thing with this Nashville Shooters Manifesto, and now this new shooter who's been called demonic. Yeah, I'm suggesting that this is all fake. And it's targeting those who still hold on to traditional values. Because again, the left wouldn't care. Salty says, I just looked at the Nashville shooting and it occurred at 11:22 a.m. Interesting timing. And I think the address was 33, 3 teachers, 3 students. The whole thing was just nothing but predictive programming. Predictive programming and their usual sets of code. But it was, like many of the other shootings, it was predicted, or it was more or less foreshadowed with this Stranger Things series. Okay, I'm going through some comments here. There's quite a lot going on, and if you haven't seen it yet, I recommend they cloned Tyrone. I have a mind map that connects this Black Christ archetype and how it ties into BLM and all these figures. And they cloned Tyrone involves a very important figure in the Black Lives Matter movement, and that would be Jamie Foxx. And it was rumored that he had been cloned before this show came out. Anyway, the significance of it is both predictive programming, concurrent programming, and of course the cloning is a reference to a resurrection. But if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I don't want to give you any spoilers, but I have to say it's got some of the best elements of Westworld, Truman Show, probably People Under the Stairs. I mean, there are so many things in that movie. A lot of Kubrick references as well. But underneath the whole thing is the specific connection between Jamie Foxx and this bigger BLM martyr script, which is constantly being used to introduce to the world this Black Christ archetype, a new martyr. A martyr, I think, for this new age. Post-Great Reset, I think they're phasing out the old Jesus. I think that's exactly what is happening. But I have a mind map that connects a lot of these, and you'll find it's kind of compelling, and it's not necessarily new, but it's definitely part of this paradigm change or shift. Going through your comments. Echo Charlie says, I read the Frank James New York City subway shooter happened in 2022, right before Brooklyn showed the Swedish movie on Anton LaVey. Never seen that. Anton LaVey from the Church of Satan has some strange connections to some of the major psyops, like the Charlie Manson killings were committed by Susan Atkins, killing Sharon Tate. Susan Atkins was a witch and dancer at the Church of Satan. He was also personally connected with Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, who attended some ceremony there before he went and did his thing. There's some fascinating connections there. Erica Bear says, if the masses wake up and start agreeing with us, are we wrong? Interesting question. If the masses wake up, there are so many false awakenings. When people say they wake up, it really just means they found a group of people that echo their beliefs, and it's very edifying. It's a big ego boost, I guess. It's like status. Now you belong somewhere. But like the red pill or the woke, they all think, oh yeah, we're awake, everyone else is asleep. But I don't think anybody's truly awake until they're psy-war savvy, until you know just how fakeable things are, have been, and how they're faked day to day. Like what I am proffering here is not a belief system. It's not a set of things that if you believe this, you're awake. Because I don't think that's true. I don't think you can take 100 red pills and now you're awake because you have 100 new facts. I think it's a total change of operating system that is required. I think it's a level of visual literacy, media literacy, and a thorough understanding of the existence of Psy-War. And that's one thing that wouldn't be graspable by someone who doesn't understand that the world stage exists. You know, the consensus worldview isn't the real thing. It overlaps enough, but it's rife with superstition, false explanations, and a number of, I would say, guardrails that keep people in a very specific worldview. And the best way to understand this is to think about like a doomsday cult living in a bunker, for example. Or the movie The Village, I think, is probably one of the best movies that explains this, where you have a segment of the population that is raised separate from the mainstream society, and they're not told it exists. And their entire reality is defined by the elders in their village. And their elders believe they're doing them a favor by protecting them from the wickedness outside. So they're raised in ignorance, but they're seemingly happy, most of them. Now, there's a few on there that are not quite happy with the illusion, and they intuitively sense it's an illusion, and they run for the exits. But the majority are content. In fact, the movie ends with Joaquin Phoenix, who's the main character, dying and resurrecting, as is typical, you know, Phoenix, that's what it means. And his death, or the death of one of the characters there, is somehow being used for the greater good, because they're like, well, now that we have a dead body, we can tell everybody the monsters killed him. And now from now on, for another generation, you have a powerful deterrent to those who would consider leaving, because it makes the monsters real. And the monsters that frighten the public today are very real to them. I mean, if you see maskies driving around, you know that there are people who are true believers. But do they know it to be real? Well, no. They've been lied to, misled, and tricked, just like any people in any religious cult. And speaking of religious cults, I really think that if you want to understand the religion of scientism and space travel, space utopianism, if you want to understand our modern paradigm and how it is a religion, just contrast it with Scientology. So Scientology is a religion based on the assumption that everybody's already infected. Everybody already has viruses, but they call them engrams. And you catch them mentally by hearing things. And until you get rid of your engrams, you will pass them on. So everybody in these Scientology enclaves goes through a therapeutic process of purging themselves of these engrams with these e-meters and talk therapy. And once you're cleared, and usually by the time you're cleared of these things, your bank accounts are also cleared, but now you're pure. And then you realize, okay, now I'm surrounded by other pure people, but anybody from our room, from our clique here, going out there, mixing with the world and the impure, will bring back engrams. So they begin to quarantine themselves and monitor each other, just like during COVID. If somebody goes out, you can't let them back in. Just like every zombie movie. Somebody goes out, you got to lock the doors. You might not be able to let them back in. So the whole premise of Scientology is that the world is in the grip of a pandemic of engrams, and their job is to cure the world. And it is 100% based on the quarantine model. And if you go, the word quarantine, 40 days, it originally goes back to Jesus, 40 days in the desert, abstaining from the world, being tempted by Satan. So the world brings sin, and he has to abstain from sin. Well, in this new updated model, they've replaced sin from virus. So now you're quarantining not from sin super spreaders, but virus super spreaders. Again, COVID is the devil that the atheists believe in, and sin is a virus counterpart that they believe in. 777 says, is there a reporter named Ingram that works for Fox News? Oh, Laura Ingram? Yeah, Laura Ingram. But she gives me engrams. In fact, she gave me an engram when she was interviewing David Hogg after Parkland, and she was complimenting his poise. She was complimenting his how he held himself in front of the camera, like the lighting, the shadows, his jawline, his hair. That's Laura Ingraham. I mean, and she had the black cross on her forehead because it was an Ash Wednesday. That whole day is worth examining. Okay, going through comments. Thinks he's a penguin says, who are the first to see The Wire? The AP is the equivalent of the GNBC, or the CNN entity is in the news benders. Okay, here's how I think it works. I think you have news bender agents in every major newsroom. Project Mockingbird. Total creative control. But more importantly, even without somebody there, some level of oversight that can take control at any time, more importantly, the people who are in the cult are thoroughly brainwashed. The teleprompter readers believe what they're reading. It is best to look at mass media as a religious organization, and it's a hierarchy of believers. Non-believers would have no place. So the engram, if you didn't know what it means, in Scientology, they say that the engram is it's like a knot or a kink in your, quote, timeline. It's some kind of blockage in your psyche that you picked up from somebody else. And until everybody gets rid of these, nobody's cured. And as long as you have them, you have depression, you have aging, you have mood swings, ill health, bad personal relationships, you're poor, you're broke, whatever your problem is, whatever's happening to you, it's a result of engrams. And the idea is if you get rid of all these engrams, you will all be ageless skydivers, movie stars like Tom Cruise. But the idea here, of course, is that you're accumulating this stuff from the non-believers. And this is why they disconnect. They call it disconnect. And this is the reason why they were protested. Because there was a point where the cult tells its members that, you can't be around these people if they're not going to join. Because they're not going to be... It's almost like the vaxxed and the anti-vaxxed. Or the anti-vaxxers. You can't hang out with the anti-vaxxers because they're going to mix with other anti-vaxxers and they're always going to infect you. So, again, I'm saying that the model of the engram pandemic that needs to be cleared and requires quarantine and segregation, identification, and separation. And they also call the people who don't want to convert suppressive persons. So you have the us versus them dynamic. That model is the model that they're using for scientism. It's a way of dividing the saved from the unsaved. And if you've noticed, the Church of Scientology has not cleared the world because it's a utopian, nonsensical objective, just like every religion thinks it's going to save the world. But now if you combine that with space travel, meaning once you go to space, you've actually transcended the world. You don't have to worry about war anymore. Once you're on a spaceship, you don't have to worry about war, capitalism, global warming, all the problems of the world you leave behind. So really, space utopianism is a way of selling people on idealism. It's always unattainable. Infinite Plane Trotter says the news has always been propaganda. It always has been. Always. From the very beginning. The idea that the news was somehow independent and it gradually was taken over, and then after 9/11 some bad guys took over these networks and Fox is bad, CNN is... No. It has always been a closed system. Joined by Newbie Gaming. Thanks for joining. So today we've been talking about MAGA Ben. That would be Ben Shapiro burning Barbie dolls because they offend his manlit version of masculinity. We talked about the incel jihad of Nick Fuentes. The dog star symbolism in the blazing X that Elon Musk put atop his building. We talked about how aliens want to depopulate us. The Barbie Oppenheimer connections and idol worship and how that might tie into the bigger picture here, and specifically how the fake nukes are real. I mean, I'm not saying that bombs aren't real, munitions aren't real, but nukes are fakeable, and they have convinced the public that these things exist. And I'm starting to think that the instant the public was convinced that this was real, the Psy War reached a new level because they obliterated the objective reality. Booster Bear says, did we talk about birds being fakeable yet? Yeah, birds are fakeable with CGI. Birds are fakeable animatronically, but are they fakeable at scale? No. The Birds Are Fake movement is a CIA/Parkland crisis actor-led psyop itself to discredit the critics of the Parkland performance, which was terrible. Probably one of the worst. As far as nuclear fallout, you won't know because you won't be able to test it. They will prevent you from testing it. You'll be prevented from accessing these areas. If you check out the movie, The Humanity Bureau, The Humanity Bureau, starring Nick Cage, came out in 2017. Humanity is locked down. There were some kind of nukes, and nobody can leave. But then somebody gets his hands on a Geiger counter, and he finds out that there's nothing to be afraid of. So why were they banning the Geiger counters? Because they wanted you to think that the place had radioactive contamination so you wouldn't flee to the north. Nicotrama says, just bought your World Stage Deprogramming Guide on Amazon. Thanks, Tim. Hey, thank you. That book, The World Stage Deprogramming Guide, is cutting edge, cutting fringe media deconstruction because it provides the arguments for preemptively considering the fakeability of all things. Now, as far as nuclear fallout and all that, that's easily fakeable. But do nukes exist in the form that they describe on TV? No, but every element of it is fakeable. Most people won't have to be firsthand witnesses. And I think that they're going to use nuclear fallout as an excuse for the next lockdown, like the toxic airborne event that we saw in Ohio, which was based on white noise and the toxic airborne event. Just like Dark Knight, which is a Netflix show very similar to Mad Max, but instead of gasoline, it's air. That you have to get air delivered to you because, of course, the environment, the sky, it's become unbreathable. But the belief in nukes is no different than religious cults that live in bunkers because they believe in God's judgment is imminent. It's the same program. It's the same priesthood. It's the Wizards of Osiris, the Wizards of Oz. It's quite literally just mind war. And they obliterated the human mind or its ability to hold on to an objective reality when they sold us that particular device as real. Booster Bear says, how do they get the counters to go off if they're faking fallout or whatever situation you want to imagine? I think it's just a matter of lying. I mean, how do they fake a pandemic? Lying. Everybody requiring some second-hand. It's always one level of filtration. I mean, they told us stay home. The hospitals are full. In fact, the hospitals are so full that there's no room in the ICUs. So bodies are piling up in the hallways. We don't have enough PPE. They're packing the bodies into the morgue freezers in the hospitals. They're packing them up in the hallways. The hospitals are so full that the bodies are actually falling out the upper windows like 9/11 jumpers. Like the hospitals are literally overflowing. Okay, so let's go see. We send some reporters, people walk around, testing centers empty, hospitals empty. If you're not familiar with the decoy tanks of World War II, I would consider that to be a historical analog where you have a bunch of inflated tanks. From far away, it looks like an army. You can report it as such. We've seen this more recently with Ukraine and Russia. One side uses dummy rocket launchers. One side uses dummy missiles. What are the odds? And if they can fake a pandemic, they can fake fallout. So your question is, how can they fake a Geiger counter? A Geiger counter? Well, the same way you could fake a test, a PCR test. The same way you could fake anything. Infinite Plane Trotter says they did a PSA about what to do in case of a nuke attack a year ago. That was in New York, and they said, if there is a nuclear attack, go to the center of your house and gather around your TV and follow the media. Because it's an alternate reality game, and the instant they say go, the game is on. And it's like a role-playing game, and you got to listen to the dungeon master, the game master, the one who tells you the script, and then you respond to the script. Booster Bear says, got it. My wife and I were both nurses. It was all lies. She was even witness to the death certificates being falsified. Well, would nurses be witnessing the death certificate? Were they autopsying the people who died of COVID? I mean, these are serious questions. Like, is there an autopsy you can show me that says this person was killed by this virus? Or was it a comorbidity? So until I get some evidence, I'm just going to have to assume that you're lying. Social media is full of people who will lie and say, I know somebody who knows somebody. I know somebody who died on 9/11. I know somebody who was on that video in Wuhan who fell on his face. Right. So I would ask, have you actually set your eyes on a death certificate? And my answer, my thinking is no. Like the people who are saying that bodies in funeral homes were clotted, that embalmers were saying that the bodies were showing up with these huge clots in the arteries. Yeah, that's fake. And I know it's fake for a few reasons. One of them is I embalmed for a few years, and one of the principal roles of the embalmer is pulling out the clots, because the instant you die, your blood's congealing. It's a big clotty mess. And you have an actual forceps in the jugular for the express purpose of maintaining the open flow, the drainage of the blood, and to pull out these big, I would say, like vegetable-like clots. But my point of it is, if somebody died unexpectedly because of a clot, if they died unexpectedly, they'd be autopsied. If they're autopsied, it means they've been opened up, and it means their arteries have been severed. It means that when they're brought into the funeral home, they're not injected with a single point injection. You wouldn't be dealing with clots. It wouldn't be a factor if you're dealing with a sudden death. So the idea that somebody died suddenly and then they were clotted, it doesn't quite follow. Portal Complex says, Alex Jones just received a shipment of iodine, used 311 code for the discount. Well, originally he started selling iodine because of Fukushima, which happened on 3/11/2010. But look, it's very easy for anonymous people to make claims. But I would ask for something more specific. Booster Bear says they were testing post-mortem, not witnessed by my wife firsthand. Then the certificate with COVID-19 was written. So in the first time in medicine means secondary conditions. Okay. But you're saying it wasn't witnessed firsthand and they were testing post-mortem. See, again, I think you're lying and kind of making stuff up to whatever it is. I mean, not everybody's a paid shill, but a lot of people are emotionally invested in the big, scary narrative. Now, I'd be interested to know, because his name is Booster Bear, if you're an anti-vaxxer or pro-vaxxer. Roxy says, claims that clots are not of the... Did you remove white clots? I removed all kinds of clots. And the thing is, the clots were not the cause of death. They were just a common facet in dead bodies. But the idea that the vaccinated or clotted and embalmers are finding this to be true has not been substantiated. It's just a couple of actors and one person who claims to be an embalmer. But I looked into them, and they're all very shady, and they're associated with Stu Peters. So I'm saying that no, that's just completely fake, hysterical nonsense. Okay, let's see here. Going through your comments. I'm so glad that the whole pandemic thing is done as far as the money. I think it's dried up. Like, there's no money in anti-vax. So it's kind of quieted down. And now things might get more interesting because I think people are just recycling and regurgitating the same talking points again and again. This is a tweet from Ice Cube. See, I mentioned this the other day. Ice Cube was hanging out with Tucker Carlson, and I think they're both fake populists. I think they're both elitists. But he tweeted this in 2020. He says, whenever you see a black cube, it represents you, find out why. And so he's sharing some of this very intriguing symbolism about Saturn and the cube and all these logos and how prevalent it is. All fascinating info. But the fact that he was wearing a monster logo on his forehead when he was hanging out with Tucker Carlson is very noteworthy to me, because there's no way that he could be unaware of the meaning behind the monster logo. So here you have Ice Cube saying he's not a gatekeeper, he's not part of the inside club, but then he's consciously wearing a 666 on his forehead. You know, make of that what you will. Julie says, I was at the concert shooting in Las Vegas. Oh, that's great. That's excellent. We have somebody who was at the Jason Aldean shooting. Now, that was fake, as you know, and the audio was projected through the speakers. It was rife with obvious crisis actors, many of whom have been hilariously exposed, mostly on BitChute now, if you just follow it. But if you want to call in and talk about it, I'd be happy to. I would be happy to talk to somebody who claims that they were in Vegas. Because if you didn't know, 50 of the people who were supposedly shot at Vegas were shot at again at a second mass shooting 13 months later, the Borderline Bar and Grill. 50 of the same Vegas shooters or victims were shot at again. So like, that's a weird coincidence, right? But not only were these 50 unlucky people in an identical event being shot at again at another country music concert, but down the street from the Borderline Bar and Grill, there was a mass casualty event that involved 50 actors. And these 50 actors, it was reported, had based their script they were reenacting off of Vegas. So if you can believe it, 50 of the people at Vegas were re-experiencing Vegas, and down the street, Vegas was being reenacted by a separate group of people who are simulating it. Nicole says, exactly, it is fake. No one could possibly like his terrible music, false flag. Yeah, look, do you really think that Jason Aldean would have anybody there if they weren't paid? And a lot of the people who were there looked like they were from Los Angeles. Like they were just like actors, and they're saying, hey, dress like your country. So they're wearing flannel, cowboy hats, and boots. None of them were real country music fans. At least not the ones that I saw getting that Uber. So they get in this Uber, and one of them's like, I was shot in the leg. And the Uber driver's like, do you want to go to the hospital? And they say, no, take us to a hotel. And the driver's like, okay, are you sure? Take us to a nice hotel. Take us to the Luxor. Like, you're telling me you got shot in the leg, but now you want to go to an expensive hotel? But they were basically getting out of town, is my point. A lot of the crisis actors showed up for the night. It's like a flash mob. Now, there was a video of somebody who was staying behind in the paddock where the concert was, where Stephen Paddock shot them. And he's telling the security guard, turn the lights back on. There's people here who've been shot. We need the EMTs. And the security guard says, no, they're already dead. Get out of here. And this guy's actually arguing with the security. He's saying, these people need help. And the security guard's like, no, we shut off the lights because they're already dead. Like, that wouldn't happen in reality. Show was over. The psyop was over. The actors were in place. They had already done what they needed to do, and they needed to clear the set. And so anybody who wasn't part of the psyop had to be flushed out. And so this guy left, but that video clip remains. And if you haven't seen it, it's a backstage view. And if you really think about it, would they shut off the lights in a concert if a bunch of people got shot? Or would they have paramedics going through and checking pulses? Okay, let me go ahead and, phones are open again if you want to try calling. Sorry I missed your call. We have somebody who wants to call in and talk about her experience at the Jason Aldean concert. Now, would you rather be shot at a Jason Aldean concert or auto-tuned to death at a Travis Scott concert? Tommy Jones says, if it's an option, you could turn your mic down and turn up the secondary source. I'll give that a try. Infinite Plane Radio. Okay, caller, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Okay, I can hear you, and I think I've leveled it out. So, if I understand you correctly, you were shot at in Vegas by Stephen Paddock?
Yeah, I was there with a date and we ran for our lives. Of course, we thought it was real. And I could hear bullets actually right above my head. I was in the VIP section. And anyway, I did a bunch of research afterwards, and there was something about helicopters shooting, like uh, silent helicopters or something with all their lights off. I don't know. Did you hear that
I did. I have heard that.
story?
I
Yeah,
heard that from high impact flicks, and some people saw helicopters in the background, and I've seen those video clips. But
yeah.
fascinating, fascinating. My explanation for that would be you were an innocent bystander in a psyop, and if anything, they were shooting simunition. But I would even doubt that. But you didn't stick around.
No, I ran. I didn't see anything gory. I didn't see anybody who got shot at. I didn't see any blood or anything. I ended up in like a Denny's restaurant where a bunch of people were kind of hiding, and I did see one kind of interesting thing, and that was really it. But um, I saw these two guys, and they were directing traffic. People were just running in these big groups, hundreds of people like running across the streets and behind buildings and stuff, and um, there were these two guys in matching shirts. They were like brown, kind of like UPS color brown. And we stopped for a minute because we had been running for a while, and I was really winded. And um, I said to my date, I'm like, why do those two guys have matching shirts? And why are they like instructing people where to run? And there was like this fence that had been torn down, and people were jumping over it and running over it, and they were directing people, and they were saying, this is not a drill. Run, run, run. They're coming, or they're after us, or after you. Keep running. Don't. This is not a drill. And I was like, that just doesn't make sense. Like if this was organic, there would not be two people there directing traffic. You know, traffic of people running for their lives. It just didn't make any sense to me. But I didn't find out until quite a while later what that might have meant. Now I guess it makes
Fascinating,
sense.
fascinating. Well, hey, I appreciate your perspective on this, and feel free to call back anytime. I'm going to do a revisit of the Vegas event because that was a very pivotal moment for a lot of people. Appreciate the call very much. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too.
So if you got that, I know the audio, as everyone is explaining here, is kind of bad, but I'm going to get the audio fixed, like I said at the very beginning. Hopefully, we don't have to deal with that again. But the caller was explaining that post shooting, there seemed to be some kind of on the ground control, maybe some kind of perhaps people who are part of the drill steering people. John Cordone says our brains are blind, deaf, organic supercomputers that live in a bony skull. It has to be receiving inputs from external stimuli via various biosensor items. Then it has to process that data. That's true. Or you can just take your reality direct from the TV screen. We will get the audio fixed, I promise. It's just going to take a couple of days here. But I'm glad that we have the phones open. It's been like one step at a time. I mean, in the last few years, it's been one step forward, two steps back in a lot of ways, but I think we're actually ahead of the curve now. We will be, in all likelihood, live tomorrow morning. especially if I'm able to get the audio situation fixed right now. When I go through the audio tonight, I'm going to fix it. So don't worry about that. I'll see if I can adjust the audio levels. And I'm also going to get the audio stream on as well. It's just these little glitches, little gremlins, mostly minor technical things. But I'm overcoming each of these things one at a time. Appreciate everyone's time. We'll be back likely tomorrow morning, like I said. And I'm going to send out our